Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today I want to talk about the differences between independent versus Thunder trucks. Now this video is more geared towards the more experienced skaters that want to dive into the world of gear, and they already have a basic understanding of gear, skating, or whatnot, so it's not really meant for the new skaters looking for parts to build their own board. But I can sum that up for you really quick if you're one of those people. Now for the independent trucks, they have a really nice carve. You can make sharp turns, faster turns on demand, and they're just one of the best turning trucks out there. Now they are a little bit on the heavier side because they have a lot of metal on the hanger, which is this part. And that means when you decide to learn grinds or whatnot, they will tend to have a lot of metal to last longer. Now, if it matters to you, these are made in China now for the current production models. You can tell if you look underneath the base plates, which is this part right here, and if it doesn't say made in the US or it doesn't have Indy's Iron Cross symbol on here, then it was made in China. Now going to the Thunder trucks. They are shorter than Indy, so they have a lower height. Now this does mean that they feel more stable on higher speeds or whatnot, and it is easier to get the tail onto the ground because now there's less distance between the tail and the ground. So it might make popping the board feel a lot easier compared to Indy. These also don't carve as well as Indy. They still do turn or whatnot, but you'll find that it's a lot more lean than turn, if that makes any sort of sense. And the bushings, which are these right here, they do need breaking in, but Thunder tends to have a longer braking period than independent trucks. And again, if it matters to you, these are made in the USA. As for what I would recommend for a beginner, I would say it really doesn't matter because since it's your first board, you don't know your personal preferences yet. Neither brand reigns supreme over the other. They both have different qualities, like I just explained, and you should just go to your local skate shop and flip a coin, honestly. After that, just skate it, ride it, see what works out. Alright, so now let's get into the specifics of both brands. I'm not going to be focusing on brand image, cosmetics, the whole political side of it, like Iron Cross stuff. That doesn't matter to me. All I care about is the performance of the trucks. Now starting off with the first comparison is the grind. Now, Independent has that slogan, built to grind. A lot of people praise the grind, and for good reason. Indies just have a really nice grind. It's very smooth. It attacks a lot of crunchy ledges and curbs with ease. And, there's really not much to complain about the grind. It just works in pretty much all aspects. Now for the Thunder trucks, I feel that they do have a harder grind. It's not like you get onto the curb and you stop dead in your tracks. But when you get onto your ledge or your curb, whatever, there's a moment where you slow down, and I notice that I don't go as fast or as far on that grind compared to independent trucks. Now, is that a bad thing? I think it really depends on what you're looking for. I like the grind of both trucks, but with the Thunders, I feel I'm more in control of my board. Reason being, so for slappies, trick combos, so the 50-50 grind into a no comply tail slide grind. That's a little bit of a complicated move. It's pretty easy, but when I slow down for a bit, I feel that I'm more in control. I have more time to react to whatever's going on in that moment. So what I feel with the Indy, you have to have really quick reflexes to do a trick like that because you're just going so fast and you don't have a lot of time to prep. You just need to do it. While with the Thunders, it allows you to slow down for a little bit and just react. It gives you more time to react to what's going on. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense explaining this, but if you switch between both trucks, you might know what I'm talking about. So again, it's not like one's better than the other. It depends on what you're looking for. Now going to the weight of the trucks, for these measurements, we're going to be comparing the 8-inch standard trucks, so the independent 139s and the Thunder 147s. And we're not going to be using the hollows, forge hollows, anything like that, just the normal standard trucks that most people ride. So for independents, they come in at a weight of 376 grams, while for Thunder, they come at 337 grams. Now, it might not seem like a huge weight difference, but if you ask anyone that switches from either or trucks, from Indy to Thunder or Thunder to Indy, they'll definitely tell you that there is definitely a huge weight difference. And a lot of people that come from Indy to Thunder, they're really shocked at the huge weight difference. Usually, when people like ride my board and have Thunders on it, and they're coming from Indy, they're like, "Wow, your board's so light!" And like, how is it? Why is it so light? And that comes from Thunder just being a lighter truck. Now, it doesn't mean that like you'll get higher ollies with Thunders because it's so light. That is part of that, but also a huge part of it is your technique. You just need to have really, really good ollie form to, have good ollies, just high ollies. And gear helps to a certain extent of that, but most of that is going to be your technique. And some people actually like the heft of the indies. It makes it feel like a real skateboard, not like a cheap toy, whatever. And again, it's just personal preference. There's no right or wrong about the weight. Now for the height, Independent is a taller truck. They come in at 55 millimeters, and I believe that's across all the board, like consistent around all the sizes. Now for Thunder, the height actually varies, but for the 8-inch versions that we were comparing, they come in at 49.78 millimeters. And I know that the larger trucks with the larger axle and whatnot, they're actually a bit taller, around 52 millimeters. I couldn't tell you why. I'm sure someone in the comments will explain that. But just keep in mind that the height varies for some reason. Now for the indies, this does mean you can use larger wheels without the riser pads, because that space between your axle and your deck is much larger, meaning you can use larger wheels, especially if you like riding larger wheels but you don't want to use riser pads. So like 55 millimeter wheels, 56 millimeter wheels, something like that. You can just stick these on, no problem. You might get a little bit of wheel bite, but nothing too severe. While with a shorter truck like this, you can still use larger wheels, but you might find that you wheel bite a lot more often, and you might need to consider using a riser pad. But a shorter truck height also has really good pros. First one being is that it's easier to get the tail onto the ground, or your nose onto the ground, because the distance between the tail and the ground is a lot shorter now, meaning you don't have to like pop down as hard or so like heavy to get a really good pop. You might find that your tricks are a lot more responsive, they're easier to do, they're a lot faster to do. And a lower truck also means that you are also lower to the ground, meaning at higher speeds or whatnot in the bowl or whatever, you're going to feel a lot more stable because your center of gravity is lower. Now if you have a playground near you and it has like those balance beams at different heights, you should try walking on those to see what I'm talking about. You're going to find that the lower balance beams are a lot easier to do, while the higher ones are going to be harder to do because your center of gravity is higher over there and it's a lot harder to balance. Now, this doesn't mean Independent is bad at high speeds. Again, it comes down to personal preference. Now coming down to the wheelbase comparison. For those who don't know what wheelbase is or wants to sum up, basically the wheelbase is the distance from your axle to the other axle. And a shorter wheelbase means that it's going to carve nicer, have a better turn. Trucks might feel a lot more responsive, but it's not going to be very stable at high speeds. Not just for like hill bind, but also in like transition and whatnot, where you tend to go a lot faster. Now with a longer wheelbase, it's the opposite of that. You're going to feel a lot more stable at higher speeds, but you won't have the best turn or carve, and the board might feel heavy, and your tricks might not feel responsive. That's a whole different topic, but that's the best I can sum it up in this video. Every deck has a set wheelbase, and that's measured from the inside mounting hole to the opposite inside mounting hole. Now the deck I use for these measurements is a 14-inch wheelbase, and the trucks I use is the standard 8-inch independent trucks versus the 8.25 Thunder trucks, the 148s. Now how I measured them is I mounted them to the board, measured both sides, so one axle to the other, and then the opposite end, one axle to the other. Then I averaged out the difference. So for the independents, I got a measurement of 17.1525 inches, and for the Thunders, I got a measurement of 17.25 inches. From what you can see from these measurements, Thunder extends your wheelbase by about 1/10 of an inch. It might not feel like a huge difference, but once you're actually riding them, if the difference is really, really noticeable. And then with Thunder, combined with that extended wheelbase and the shorter height, it makes for a really nice stable ride, but at the cost of turn. While with the Independence, you're sacrificing some stability for more turn and more carve. And again, it comes down to personal preference. This one a lot of people don't actually know about, but your Independent and Thunder trucks can actually affect the pop feel of your deck. So when you're at the skate shop and you're trying to like pop the deck and potentially damage it, that's not a really good way of determining if a deck is good. And you're just gonna get the skate shop employee pissed off because you're just damaging a product that's not even yours. What it really comes down to is first your technique, and the second is just the trucks. So this actually comes into like a little physics thing. Think as your skateboard as a lever, and this is like your pivot point and where your truck is. So if you can do this for yourself too. So if you just put it here and you feel that and you do this, you'll feel it feels decent, But if you set that pivot point further back, you'll find that the front, which is this part, feels a lot more heavier, but you also feel that you get a lot more return from the energy. And I'll put up a video up right here right now to show what I mean. So as you can see, I put the coin on one end, starting the pivot point from the middle, and then I just launch the coin, and it goes a little bit distance. But now I move that pivot point back further, put the coin onto the thing, and then when I launch it, the coin goes a lot further. And this is the same exact thing that's happening with their Independent and Thunder trucks. So you get your deck, so you put Thunders on, and you'll find that the front might feel a lot more heavy, but a lot more explosive. You get more explosive pop, you get more return, and it's just really good for like really, really snappy tricks. While for the Independence, if you're coming from Thunder, you might feel that responsiveness isn't really there. Depending on what deck you have, you might find that your board feels a little bit lighter, not too responsive, and it might just feel like really weird or not too good for your tech tricks or whatnot. This is just a really weird gear madness thing. Again, a lot of it comes to your technique rather than the gear itself. You find that you can't do your ollies or flip tricks with the same deck and using the same trucks, or it's like you try Indy and you try Thunder and nothing's working. That's more of a you problem rather than a gear problem. Now, it is kind of a hard concept to explain on camera, at least for me. But if you try out that experiment that I showed you, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I find that Thunders work a lot well on the more mellow decks, so mellow concave, the mellow kicks that don't have such a steep angle, while Independents work really, really well on decks that have like medium or steep concave and more steeper kicks. Because the qualities of the trucks just really even out the qualities of the deck. So if you have too much leverage, so if you get a really, really steep deck and you put on Thunders, you put on riser pads to increase your leverage, you'll find that the distance between the tail and the ground is huge and really, really uncontrollable. It's not going to feel consistent at all when you try to pop your tricks. And you might feel that it's actually too responsive, like way too sensitive to what you're trying to do. Like when you pop your truck, your board, I mean, it might just launch up really, really high, something that you don't want. And again, if you combine those two qualities of the decks together, both things together, like the deck and the truck, it'll really just combine to make a really, really nice combination. That's what I personally believe, but you might just want to experiment with different parts and different techniques to see what works best for you. Now for aftermarket parts, Independent just wins in that regard. There's no getting around that. So a lot of aftermarket parts, mainly bushings, they're all like designed around Independent's design, and for good reason. Independent is the oldest truck brand that's still active today and still has a huge following. So you can use like a lot of different bushings in these because those bushings are designed around Independent's design. So like Bones bushings, Doe bushings, stuff like that, While for Thunder trucks, they don't have a lot of aftermarket parts, again, related to the bushings. They have a proprietary design where the top bushing is a little bit shorter than Indy, but the bottom bushing is a bit taller than Indy's bottom bushing. You could use different parts, but there's no guarantee that it will work correctly or work to your expectations. I find that the best thing for me is to just stick with Thunder's aftermarket parts for these Thunder trucks. So for this one, I have the Aftermarket 90A white bushings, and I just never found the need to like put bones bushings in, independent bushings inside the Thunder trucks, just because I know that these work because they have a proprietary design, and I don't want to like mess up anything. Well, for independent, I could get away with pretty much using almost every bushing in here because those bushings are designed for independents, even though those bushing brands aren't from independent. But it's not like there isn't like aftermarket parts available for Thunder. I'm just saying that there's a lot more options for independent. Now for offerings, independent does offer more sizes. They offer the same sizes as Thunder, but in addition, they also offer the 109s, which is, I believe, a 6.5-inch axle, so it's really small, and the 215s, which is a 10-inch axle. And that's really good for like those weird boards, like the really really large ones or the really really small ones. And it's just good for people looking for that option. While Thunder doesn't offer those, they only offer from a 7.6 axle all the way to 9.1-inch axles. And that's honestly not a huge deal breaker because not many people ride those two sizes that I mentioned before. For like graphics or like color options or whatnot, they're pretty much equal in that regard. They're fairly consistent with like printing like pro graphics or whatever, like colored options, different hardware or bushing colors. They're pretty consistent with each other, so there's no real winner in that regard. You can just get whatever looks best. Now, taking all of this into account, which is better? And you've already heard me say it so many times throughout this video, but it's all up to you. It's all personal preference. Some people are going to claim that Indy's better because it turns better. Some people say Thunder's better because it's just more stable. It makes everything feel better, like their tricks or whatever. But really, it just boils down to personal preference and what works for you. So for instance, here are my Thunder Hollow Lights 169s. And I really like these trucks. They grind well, they feel great, they make the board feel a lot lighter, especially with the bigger ones, and they feel really, really stable on transition. And I don't have a lot of complaints about these. I do use a riser pad, just the 8-inch version, to make it a little bit taller, just because I use larger wheels. And it's a truck that fills out a lot of my preferences. And despite saying all of that, right now I am skating independent 169s. And why would I make that switch even though I say so many good things about the Thunders? Well, for the Thunders, at the time, I didn't really need that stability so much. I needed a lot more turn. So I decided to switch back to the Independents. And it gave me that turn that I was looking for at the cost of that stability. And that stability issue wasn't really a thing because my skill level really outweighs that stability issue. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that their preferences might change over time, or people had different preferences, like me. At first, I really, really liked Thunders, but eventually I was looking for something with more turn and more carve, which is why I made that switch to Indy, despite me liking Thunder so much. And again, none of them are the best. One doesn't reign supreme over the other. It's just personal preference. You just really need to figure out what works best for you. So if you're someone that's looking for more turn, and really likes grinding a lot, want to go really, really fast, maybe Independent's the one for you. But for someone that wants more stability, wants a shorter truck height, really wants a fast, snappy pop, maybe Thunder's the one for you. And I really can't say that you should get this or the other. Again, as I've said so many times in this video, it's really up to you about what you want and what your personal preference is. So yeah, that's been another video. I feel like I covered everything on this topic. But if you feel like I missed something or didn't really explain something really, really well, please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, that has been another video. Thanks for watching, and I hope this has helped you in some way.